This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg in South Africa. I'm Catrine Malan in for Eben Janssen this morning. The show is live and broadcast from our studios in Auckland Park. We are also streaming live on YouTube as we speak, with the entire show available on our YouTube channel all the time. We wrap up the latest with the seemingly never-ending platinum strike. We cross live to the High Court in Cape Town, where Honeymoon Murder suspect Shrien Dewani is expected to appear today, and we assess the damage caused by veld fires in parts of the country this week. But first, Anin gives us a news update.
A very good morning from me, Anin Domal. Let's take a look at the stories making news headlines today. Murder-accused Shrien Dewani will appear in the Western Cape High Court again today. An update on his mental health is expected to be given to the court. This will be his third appearance on charges relating to the murder of his wife, Annie, while they were on honeymoon in Cape Town in November 2010. The economic freedom fighters will brief the media today following their parliamentary walkout yesterday evening. The EFF's MPs walked out after their leader, Julius Malema, was ordered to leave the House. He was kicked out for refusing to withdraw a remark accusing the ANC of murdering mine workers in Marikana. George Luca, the man accused of murdering Teaser's boss Lolly Jackson in 2010, is expected in the Auckland Park Magistrates Court today. The Hawks believe they have a watertight case against Luca. Luca fled South Africa and returned to his hometown in Cyprus shortly after Jackson's murder. In 2012, South African authorities began a process to have him extradited to the country. Luca made several attempts to evade extradition, but he failed when he lost his final appeal last year in the Cyprus Supreme Court. In an Randburg Magistrates Court, the two Gauteng policemen are expected to appear for allegedly shooting at musician Khuli Chana at a roadblock on the N1 last year. Uruguay secured a dramatic late 2-1 victory over England in their World Cup Group D clash. England pushed for an equaliser, but Uruguay held firm, picking up 3 points that could go a long way to putting them in the knockout stages. The result left England, who lost 2-1 to Italy in their opener bottom of the group, with little hope of reaching the last 16. That's your headlines today. Back to you, Catrine.
Well, thank you, Anin. The strike in the platinum mining sector will continue as mining bosses consider a counter-proposal by workers. The AMCU-led strike in the platinum mines is still going on, despite last week's expectations of a settlement. AMCU and Amplats, Implats and Lonmin reached separate in-principle agreements last week. AMCU then submitted written responses with their new demands. Platinum companies said the additional demands would involve extra costs of around 1 billion rand. Now, SABC economics reporter Mbungeni Mutwa is in the studio to give us a wrap of what exactly has been happening. Mbungeni, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Let's just start with, give us a quick update. Where are we now in this process? It feels like it's 1 step forward, 4 steps back.
Well, it's hard negotiations, obviously. At this point, AMCU has been meeting with the platinum companies separately or individually since the beginning of this week. They first met with Lonmin to give them feedback, official feedback, after having taken the in-principle agreement, as they call it, to members for mandating. Then they've met with Anglo. We're expecting them to wrap up these discussions with the companies by meeting with Implats today. Basically, that's where we are.
Now, the negotiations, what do we call them? Deadlocked, partially, collapsed, or both?
None of the above, it would seem, because the parties are talking, so they are negotiating. And of course, last week everyone thought that a deal was imminent, but it seems that that's not necessarily the case at the moment. So it's back to the negotiating table at this point.
Now, do we know the agreements? What was exactly reached in principle?
The main thing that was agreed to in principle was the wage increase. The employers had been offering, up until last week, they had been offering an increase of around 800 rand, on monthly salaries, which they increased to 1,000 rands on monthly salaries. That was a big step, and that's what the workers, the striking workers, actually accepted in principle. But of course now they've since come back and actually said, fine, we're happy with this offer, but we're not happy, for instance, with the term of the proposed agreement. 5 years that the companies had put forward, they want the agreement to be 3 years. And now one of the major sticking issues at the moment is the issue of possible retrenchments. The workers are insisting now that the companies should sign in the agreement that no one is going to be retrenched for the duration of the agreement, because there is a real threat of massive retrenchments once workers go back to work and the mines reopen.
Let's just get clarity. Amku, are they going against the mandate of their members by not agreeing to this agreement now?
Certainly, they would say they are not. It's really hard to say they are, because throughout this week, we've seen members of the striking miners gathering in Rustenburg and actually voicing their support for the stance that the leadership is taking at the moment. In fact, they are saying that it is them who have instructed the leadership to go and fight and push for these conditions, as they call them, which the employers obviously call new demands. So to say that it's not a mandated position, there is no basis for that argument at this point.
Would you say that one of the fundamental requirements, trust, is lacking between the parties involved? Because do they even know that they really do need each other in this battle?
It's really hard to say. If you look at the way that the strike and the negotiations have unfolded up until now, do the parties trust each other? It's hard to say, except to say that the problem, which is what led to the strike, is that the positions of the two parties are just too far apart. To bridge the gap is what is proving to be very difficult so far.
Now, parties failed to reach an agreement. The CCMA and the Labour Court failed, and the new Mineral Resources Minister also failed. Where are we going with this? Is there ever going to be an end to the strike?
Well, an end, yes, but when, no one knows. Last week, everyone was getting excited that we looked like we were there. Finally, we were there. The strike was basically coming to an end. And now, it's really doubtful. The parties are saying that what is happening at the moment is not a major deadlock as such. They are still both, they want to sign, but these issues that AMCU has put on the table are going to prove to be difficult for the companies to agree to. The 30,000 rand cash payment that they want the salaries to be backdated to the period covering the last 5 months that workers have been on strike, which is against the no work, no pay rule. Also, given the current economic conditions, it's going to be very hard for any of the companies to actually sign on paper and say, we're not going to retrench anyone over the next 3 or 5 years. So today we should get an indication as to where this is going. But if the current negotiations fail, I think from next week or in the coming weeks, we could start to see this matter heading to the courts. Maybe one of the employers or collectively maybe trying to try and end the strike by legal means.
Mbongeni, thank you so much for joining us today. And that was our SABC economics reporter, Mbongeni Mutwa, giving us an update on the ongoing, seemingly never-ending platinum strike. Now, moving on, news making headlines on SABC platforms. One of our headline stories this morning, Economic Freedom Fighters leader Julius Malema has been asked to leave the National Assembly after refusing to withdraw a remark accusing the ANC of murdering mine workers in Marikana. Malema made the remarks during his maiden speech on Wednesday. EFF MPs then staged a dramatic walkout.
Honorable Malema, the instruction to you is withdraw the statement.
I won't do that.
Made.
I'm sorry, I won't do that.
I will ask you again, Honorable Malema, withdraw that statement.
I maintain the ANC government killed people in Marikana.
You leave me no choice but to ask you to leave the House.
No problem.
Thank you.
You murdered people in Marikana. You kill people and...
You are the premier there.
Matras.
Honorable members,
You are Matras.
leave the house.
And you were the premier.
You were the
When
premier
they died,
You were the leave the house.
Premier, when people were killed.
You were the premier, Tand.
Yes, I was the premier.
Let's now take a look at the front pages of the World today. In the US, the latest on possible military intervention by American forces. Then disappointment reflecting on most of the UK papers this morning after England lost 2-1 to Uruguay in their World Cup Group D match. And then Spain welcomed a new king yesterday, as well as a divorced former journalist and Spain's first commoner as their queen. Well, let's now take a look at what you're saying on social media. Please remember to send us your views at SABC Newsroom. We love your pictures, your comments, your opinions. So we post them on the show. We have a discussion about that. And you can also follow what we are saying at SABC Newsroom. There we have it. Advice to AMCU and Platinum Strike companies when dealing with the big issue. It's important to break it down into bite-sized chunks. The platinum price up $20 today tells me there's little expectations of a speedy resolution. #Platinum Strike. The platinum price, let me skip that one, is AMCU assisting Malema in forcing Lonmin to close due to unrealistic continued platinum strike demands in order to nationalize mines. Platinum strike, will those at the top dabble real hurt while they dabble real hurt at ground level, which both sides could find an answer. People are suffering. Then I swear that the platinum strike is only going to end in October at this rate. Well, today is World Refugee Day, as recognized by the United Nations. Every year, thousands of refugees flee their countries for a variety of reasons, and many of them end up in even worse situations, either dying while trying to cross borders, face abuse, or are detained. For years, many countries and regions have been holding their own refugee days and even weeks. One of the most widespread is the Africa Refugee Day, which we celebrate today. A few years ago, Hollywood actress and Goodwill ambassador Angelina Jolie had the following touching message about Refugee Day.
We are here today to talk about millions of desperate families. Families so cut off from civilization that they don't even know that a day like this exists on their behalf. Millions. And numbers can illuminate, but they can also obscure. So I'm here today to say that refugees are not numbers. They're not even just refugees. They are mothers and daughters and fathers and sons. They are farmers, teachers, doctors, engineers. They're individuals all. And most of all, they are survivors, each one with a remarkable story that tells of resilience in the face of great loss. They are the most impressive people I have ever met, and they are also some of the world's most vulnerable. Stripped of...
Oh, what a touching message there from Hollywood actress and Goodwill ambassador Angelina Jolie on Refugee Day. Time now to take a break. This is Newsroom on SABC News.
Who are we, you ask? This is who we are.
We are technologically driven.
We are unashamedly Afrocentric.
We advise you not only on legal matters,
but on health issues as well.
We bring imagination to life.
We celebrate arts and culture and lifestyle.
We tackle life challenges head on.
We dig deep. We probe. We question.
We invite you to take a view from our house, as we tell it without fear separating fiction from factual. We are the SABC News Channel.
All news, all global, all the time.
Hello and welcome back. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. Today, British honeymoon murder suspect Shrien Dewani is expected to appear in the High Court in Cape Town on 5 charges relating to the murder of his wife Annie in November 2010. Dewani, a 34-year-old businessman from Bristol, was extradited to South Africa last month and is currently receiving mental health treatment at the Valkenburg Hospital in Cape Town. His case has been adjourned till today after lawyers argued last month that he was not yet fit to stand trial. Now, from the High Court in Cape Town, we are joined by Vanessa Puna, who is our reporter outside court. Good morning, Vanessa.
Good morning.
Vanessa, I want you to just start off with setting the scene for us outside there in court, and what are we expecting today?
Yes, this morning, once again, we see quite a large media contingent arriving here at the Western Cape High Court in anticipation of the third appearance of Mr. Shrien Dewani after he was successfully extradited to South Africa to stand trial for his wife's murder in 2010. Now, we know that at the previous 2 court appearances, which were very brief, his mental state has come up upon his arrival in South Africa. Mr. Devani was then taken to the Valkenburg Psychiatric Hospital, where he is currently a voluntary patient receiving treatment, not observation, for a post-traumatic stress disorder as well as depression. Also at the previous court appearance, his advocate, Francois van Zyl, told the court that it would appear as though Mr. Devani's mental state has improved somewhat, but that still he could only consult with him for periods of 30 minutes at a time because he battled to concentrate for longer than that. So today we are expecting the court to hear whether Mr. Devani has improved to the point where a trial date could be set. There has been rumours, it has been rumoured that we could see a trial date set by October this year, but that will be ascertained once court proceedings get underway at 10 o'clock here at the Western Cape High Court.
Now, Vanessa, just take us back to 2010. It's been since then to get Devani in South Africa to appear in court.
Yes, Annie Devani was killed in November 2010, allegedly while on a township tour in Gugulethu. Now, we have seen that 2 accused or convicted of her murder have already have already been sentenced to respectively 25 and 18 years respectively. One of those that have already been convicted is the taxi driver Zola Tongo. And upon his evidence before the court in his plea bargain agreement, he alleges that Mr. Devani acquired his services to have his wife killed here in South Africa. He's currently serving an 18-year sentence. Nzwamadoda Kwabe is currently serving a sentence of 25 years. And then also the alleged hitman, the alleged triggerman, Kolile Mgeni, who, as we know, has been treated and has undergone surgery for a brain tumor and very recently also rushed to hospital with regards to his condition, has already been tried in this Western Cape High Court. So 3 people already sentenced with regards to the murder of Annie Devani, and now today the third appearance of Shrien Dewani after quite a lengthy battle, not only here but also in the UK courts to have him stand trial.
Vanessa, last week there were reports in British newspapers that Devani was admitted to hospital in a serious critical condition. Any truth to these reports, and what is the latest on his health?
The latest on Mr. Devani's health is that he is currently undergoing a treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder as well as depression. Now, previously we did hear that his condition has improved slightly. And today we're expecting to get further information with regards to whether or not he has improved to the extent where a trial date can be set soon. We do know that one of the accused in the matter, Kolile Mgeni, was rushed to hospital, to the Groote Schuur Hospital, after his brain tumor treatment as well as surgery. We also have learned that he has since been discharged from hospital and is now back in the custody of correctional services.
Now, just recap to us, briefly explain how Devani's health will impact this case.
Look, we do know that at this stage, if someone is not mentally fit to stand trial, they can't possibly do so. We also know that as part of the undertaking from the South African government and the National Prosecuting Authority, that if Mr. Devani is not yet fit to stand trial within 18 months from the date of his extradition, he will then return to Britain. So at this point, I would say that the entire trial does depend on whether or not he is found to be fit to stand trial. All this will come to light when more evidence is presented before this court to exactly how much he has improved and whether indeed he will be able to face a trial in South Africa.
Now, Vanessa, just to wrap, the media presence today. We've seen the media at the Oscar Pistorius trial. How's it today at the Devani trial?
I would be careful to say that it's a more low-key affair than the Oscar Pistorius trial, although there is still a lot of media interest here at the Western Cape High Court from the very date that Annie's body was found in Khayelitsha in 2010 until today. There is still a large media contingent here at court. We do know that Judge President John Schlope has banned any pictures of Mr. Devani while inside court. So there seems to be a protection of Mr. Devani until his mental state has been determined. But still a very large media contingent and also lots of media interest in this matter also.
Well, Vanessa, thank you so much for joining us. And that's our reporter, SABC News reporter Vanessa Puna, in front of the High Court in Cape Town, where honeymoon murder suspect Shrien Dewani is expected to appear today. Now, farmers in southern KwaZulu-Natal and the Eastern Cape have been counting the cost of the devastating veld fires that raged through the Kokstad, Cedarville and Swartberg areas last weekend. At the same time, they're keeping an eye on more threats in the case strong winds forecast for the region cause more runaway fires. According to reports, more than 6 people died in the fires, and indications are that more than 25,000 hectares were razed to the ground, destroying livestock, buildings and equipment. We are now joined from our PE studio by Yuri Blichnout to give us a wrap of the whole week. Good morning, Yuri.
Hi, good morning.
Yuri, can you start off with just giving us the latest on the veld fires situation in the region?
Well, the blazes seem to have started up over the weekend, here through Sunday in the northern parts of the Eastern Cape, Matatehel, Cedarville, and as you've mentioned, they were driven by gale force winds, which was part of the cold fronts that moved across the country. Now, with these fires, they've moved right through the Kokstad area into the southern parts of KwaZulu-Natal. And some of the latest official figures we have is that 10 people have lost their lives here in the Eastern Cape, including a grandmother and her 3 grandchildren, when their house was swamped by the flames. And in KwaZulu-Natal, the figure is standing at 8 people that have lost their lives there due to the fires. Now, the cost of the fires are being counted. Teams have moved into the areas to look at the damage, to assess how many people have been affected. The South African Social Security Agency is busy assisting the families to get all their things in order, those who have lost documentation, those that need to deal with the deaths. Also on the agricultural side, the Eastern Cape Department of Agrarian Reform have been to the area. They're assisting the farmers. Emergency feed stocks will be sent through to the farmers as soon as it can be gathered up. Because from what we gather, more than 3,000 heads of livestock have been claimed by the fire, and with that, more than 15,000 hectares of grazing land. Now, this grazing land is quite important here through winter, as those parts of the country are much drier than the coastal areas, as they do not receive a lot of rain in winter. And with these fires, it destroyed huge tracts of land, which is leaving these farmers in a very precarious position. Other than the livestock lost, the ones they still have left are now in the position where starvation is becoming a real issue.
Any more clarity on exactly how many lives were lost? We read 6, but has that number perhaps gone up?
Yes, as I've mentioned earlier, the latest official figure in the Eastern Cape side of the fire, that includes 10 lives, and from what I gather in my research, that 8 people in KwaZulu-Natal have lost their lives directly linked to the fire. And with that, if I can add, in the Eastern Cape side, apologies, that more than 50 residential dwellings have also been affected or completely razed by the fire.
And in terms of aid for these victims, has aid been given? Where are they now, living now?
As far as we know, those who have been affected are being accommodated in official structures or with friends and family. Official aid is still coming through. The Eastern Cape Department of Agrarian Reform has gathered all the documentation and forwarded that through to the National Department to do an application for disaster relief, as they want this area to be declared a disaster area so that financial aid and other forms of aid can be forwarded through to the area as quick as possible.
Now, Yuri, farmers are keeping their eye on the winds. Has there been any more threats of outbreaks in the region?
Not since Monday. In some parts, maybe they're doing some damping down or battling smaller fires. But yes, a close eye is kept on the fire as the cold fronts come through from the south. That will bring up the high winds again, and that's a thing that people are looking out for. A call has also been put out to motorists to not flick their cigarette butts out of car windows in those areas, as the veld is very dry, and this really exacerbates the problem and ignites a fire fairly quickly, especially when the wind does come up.
Yuri, people don't understand these type of weather conditions. What are the other warnings, what people should look out for, not flicking their cigarette butts? How a veld fire like this happens immediately. Can you just explain to us how people should take caution?
Well, people are encouraged to be fire aware of which areas would be high-risk areas, which conditions would be conducive to veld fires, like high winds, like the drier parts in the central parts of our country, as we've seen here, especially in winter, as these combinations then work together to create the perfect conditions for a fire. So people are aware to make themselves aware of what not to do in these kind of situations. Farmers are also being encouraged to continue to have fire breaks, to make sure that their land is structured in such a way that if a fire do break out, that it can be stopped or prevented. And farmers are also encouraged to have communication with one another on a regular basis, and if a fire do break out, that they can spread the word quickly and try and have them to block and stop the fire so you don't have it spreading fast. But in this situation, it was very difficult because of the high winds. The fire managed to jump roads and fire breaks almost at will, and that has led to the large tracts of land being consumed by the flames.
Well, Yuri, thank you so much for joining us this morning. That was our SABC reporter, Yuri Blichner, joining us in our PE studio to talk about the veld fires that raged havoc this week in parts of the Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal. Let's now take a look at what you are saying on social media. Please remember to send us your views to @SABC Newsroom. You can send us your pictures, your comments, your opinions. We put them on the show and we have a discussion around them. There we have it. It's all World Refugee Day today. Did you know there are close to 2 million Hindu refugees in J&K? What does World Refugee Day mean to them? Will their honor be ever redeemed? There aren't other people, they are just you or me in dire circumstances. A tiny fraction of the world refugees seeks our protection. We violate their rights to deter others thinking of coming. #World Refugee Day. We all need somewhere where we feel safe. Emma Thompson. There you have beautiful pictures coming in from World Refugee Day. Truly something to remember today and reflect on today. This is a refugee camp. And then there are other pictures coming in on social media. Remember, you can send us your pictures and your tweets and your comments. Earlier, we had an interesting, touching message from Goodwill Ambassador and Hollywood actress Angelina Jolie, speaking about World Refugee Day. You can find that on our Facebook page after the show to view the full clip. Now, talking about Facebook, let's have a look. There you'll find the latest on the high-profile cases happening in the country today, from Shrien Dewani to George Luca appearing a murder accused of Lolly Jackson. More detail available on our Facebook page. There you'll also find the latest on the strike in the mining sector, and then, as mentioned earlier today, is World Refugee Day. Latest figures available show that the number of refugees of concern to the UN stood at 10.4 million refugees at the beginning of 2013. You can read more on those details and those statistics on our Facebook page, Facebook.com/SABC Newsroom. Well, time now to take a break. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News.
I once saw a flower blossom through 27 prison bars of yesterday's unjust flames. I felt an old woman's anticipation for the country's first open elections. And I heard the loud celebrations of that flower's historic inauguration. I was there when Unity sang of how the Springbok never held anything back, and we saw a first-time band of 11 men, Shibobo possibility throughout the land. At the foot of Africa, time remembers how truth can reconcile a people. We carved our name into space, and on the world stage, our art stood united. When we blow that vuvuzela, the whole world goes into a trance. And even in that tearful hour of the flower's separation, we are a people who see the music and hear the flowers dance. SABC, sharing 20 years of inspiration.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. Let's have a look at the news-making headlines. Murder accused Shrien Dewani will appear in the Western Cape High Court again today. An update on his mental health is expected to be given to the court. This will be his third appearance on charges relating to the murder of his wife Annie while they were on honeymoon in Cape Town in November 2010. The economic freedom fighters will brief the media today following their parliamentary walkout yesterday evening. The FFF's MPs walked out after their leader Julius Malema was ordered to leave the House. He was kicked out for refusing to withdraw a remark accusing the ANC of murdering mine workers in Marikana. Judge Luca, the man accused of murdering Teaser's boss, Lolly Jackson, in 2010, is expected in the Kempton Park Magistrates Court today. The Hawks believe they have water ties against Luca. Luca fled South Africa and returned to his hometown in Cyprus shortly after Jackson's murder. In 2012, South African authorities began a process to have him extradited to the country. Luca made several attempts to evade extradition, but he failed when he lost his final appeal last year in the Cyprus Supreme Court. Then in the Randburg, Magistrates Court, 2 Gauteng policemen are expected to appear for allegedly shooting musician Kuli Chana at a roadblock on the N1 last year. Uruguay secured a dramatic late 2-1 victory over England in their World Group D clash. England pushed for an equaliser, but Uruguay held firm, picking up 3 points that could go a long way to putting them in the knockout stages. The result left England lost 2-1 to Italy in their opener, bottom of the group, with little hope of reaching the last 16. Those are your headlines today. Back to you, Catrine.
Well, thank you, Anine. The man dubbed Mr. X testified at the Marikana Commission and gave a detailed account of killings and the destruction of property yesterday. Mr. X is a minor and cannot be named to protect his identity. He claims he was part of a group of militant miners who led the strike and intimidated others. 44 people were killed in days of violence at Marikana in 2012, which ended in a clash between police and striking miners.
There were several technical glitches. Finally, the long-awaited testimony of Mr. X started. Mr. X says he was one of the leaders of a group of miners who led the strike for an increase in wages for rock drill operators. He testified that the NUM leadership was seen as traitors after they escorted some miners to work the night shift. Mr. X's testimony is crucial to the case police are presenting to the Commission. They maintain on the day they clashed with miners but shot in self-defense.
You agree that it is very important that the affected families should know how and why their loved ones lost their lives. You are aware, sir, that you are expected to honestly, openly and truthfully testify before this commission and to answer relevant questions.
Regarding
Earlier, Advocate Dali Mpofu, acting on behalf of the injured miners, raised concerns that Mr. X's evidence negatively implicated at least 4 of his clients.
The extent to which he implicates others in gruesome and serious crimes, to say the least, ought itself to be taken from whence it comes, and to the extent that he, by his own admission, is a tainted type of witness.
Thanks.
Proceedings have been adjourned until Friday. It's been a day of gruesome testimony. Mr. X has challenged the miners' version of what happened that fateful day in August in 2012. And in the following week, more is expected to be revealed. Nozintombi Mia, SABC News, Centurion.
While the police witness dubbed Mr. X will continue testifying at the Parliamentary Commission of Inquiry today, we now cross to our SABC reporter Nozintombi Mia, who joins us now from Pretoria. Nozintombi, let's start with what exactly Mr. X said yesterday at the inquiry.
Good morning, Catrine. Just to give a recap of what Mr. X was speaking about, some of the big highlights was around the issue of how on the 12th, a group of 15 strike mine leaders, which they call themselves the Makarapas, went ahead and killed 2 Lonman security guards. Now, the detail in how they killed the 2 mine security guards, one of the mine security guard was killed and then burned in his car, while the other security guard was killed, dragged a few meters away from where the car was, and he had several of his body parts removed. We do know that the tongue, the ears, and part of the nose was taken off to be taken and to be used as part of the Muti ritual that they're going to be using. And this Muti ritual was to help them gain more strength, to help them become more invisible towards police bullets as the police were firing to them. But we do know subsequently that obviously that Muti ritual didn't work, and 34 miners ended up dying. So those were some of the big highlights of Mr. X's testimony yesterday.
Some gruesome stuff, Nozintombi. What was the atmosphere and the scene like yesterday at the inquiry?
The atmosphere was extremely tense. We had a lot of security guards. Security at these particular proceedings were extremely tight. And we had quite a number of AMCU mine workers who were here, just making sure that they were watching the proceedings. We had a number of the family members of some of the miners who had been killed, and they were in absolute shock as details emerged. More and more chilling details emerged from Mr. X's testimony of how their loved ones ended up dying. So it was extremely tense, and the families were in absolute shock and horror as they listened to Mr. X's testimony.
Now, just explain to us, how much weight does his testimony hold in this inquiry?
As we have discussed, Mr. X's testimony is extremely important for the police's case, because you remember that the police had said that they shot back at the protesting miners in self-defense. Now, Mr. X's testimony corroborates what the police have said, because he's explained how the miners planned on provoking the police into interacting and engaging with the miners. He's explained how the mine workers, the group of militant mine workers, were extremely violent, and they made sure that they went out of their way to provoke police into attacking them so that they could retaliate by hitting back at the police. So it's Mr. X's testimony, in essence, could be a coup for the police case.
Now, does it seem like Mr. X's statement at this stage will survive critical cross-examination?
Well, that's only a question that time will tell. We do know that today will be the conclusion of his testimony, and as of next week, Monday, we'll start hearing the cross-examinations. We do know that Advocate Dali Mpofu, who is representing the injured miners, will be one of the first people to cross-examine Mr. X's testimony. And you will remember that yesterday, Dali had put in a preliminary objection to say that 5 of his
5 of the people that he's representing were unfairly represented in Mr. X's testimony. So only time will tell at this moment what will happen when Mr. X's testimony bears under cross-examination, whether or not he will remember the facts as they were, or if there will be some discrepancies in what he said in his testimony and the facts that are coming out of that cross-examination.
Nozimtombi, how have the family members been dealing with this?
The family members have been clinging to each other for support. It's been a grueling few years to come to the Marikana Commissions. You will remember many of them do not live around the Marikana areas. Most of them come from the Eastern Cape and other provinces surrounding that area from KZN. So they've had to get transport to take them to these proceedings so that they can witness it. And it's been absolutely heart-wrenching for them to see them coming into the proceedings, sitting there, listening attentively day in, day out as the proceedings resume. It's absolutely heart-wrenching to see the sorrow and how they're trying to come to grips with the fact that their loved ones have died as a result of either police action or from the fellow miners themselves who were part of the protest. So it's been extremely difficult for the families to cope, and there is a lot of grief here at this particular commission, but I guess it's part of how people are coping, how the families are trying to deal and come to terms with the fact that their loved ones have essentially died.
Well, Nozimtombi, thank you so much for joining us. And that's our SABC reporter at the Marikana Commission of Inquiry today, where police witness Mr. X is expected to continue his testimony today. Now, as mentioned earlier in the show, today is International Refugee Day. Every year, thousands of refugees flee their countries for a variety of reasons. Many of them end up in even worse situations, either dying while trying to cross borders, face abuse, or are detained. Earlier this week, we spoke to Dr. Martin Siberwa from the University of Pretoria's Centre of Human Rights about the situation in Eritrea, where thousands of children flee the country every year. Here's what he had to say.
Eritrea got independence in 1991, and the independence came out after a protracted 30-year war, which is one of the longest liberation wars, the longest liberation war that was experienced in Africa. And then there was a bit of peace between that time and 1998, when a border war broke out between Eritrea and Ethiopia. And then since that time, really, the human rights situation in the country has been very difficult for the people who live there. And the result of those challenges in Eritrea have seen children and adults leaving the country in large numbers, with Eritrea being one of the largest producers of refugees in the world. And never-ending military conscription is one of the problems that results in children leaving the country, and also the economic hardships that are faced by children and, of course, adults alike.
So the fear of military service is one of the main factors pushing these kids across the border. What are the other general factors that also play a role?
Yes, the other general factors besides the military conscription or national service is that the economic situation in Eritrea is quite challenging, in the sense that people are not able to pursue their careers. They are put in military service for a great deal of their lives. Some people have been doing military service for the last 18 years. And children, once they are conscripted, they are never able to really leave. And then the level of education, the quality of education is also questionable. So many young people already cannot see a future for themselves in those kind of situation that is prevailing in Eritrea at the moment. So factors include lack of access to proper education, military conscription, difficult economic hardship in the country that many children also experience.
Is it true, I just want to clarify, that children are denied a school leaving certificate in some cases if they do not decide to join the military?
Yes, that happens. What happens is that the Eritrean education system goes up to grade 12, and once children do up to grade 11 in whatever schools that there will be across the country, the grade 12, then they have to go to a military training camp, which is called SAWA. And while they are in SAWA for the 12 months that they are there, at least half of the time is spent doing military training. So effectively, they are conscripted in the army at that time. And then even when they are doing their education while still at SAWA, they also do it under a military kind of system. And if a child does not go to SAWA, doesn't agree to do the military training, then one of the, of course, punishment that you face is they either take away your student card, which means you don't get a lot of services that will be open to an ordinary citizen. And the other problem is that they will also refuse to give you, your certificate in the event that you are even able to do your grade 12. So they have those systems to discourage young people from not joining the army. I mean, not turning away from the army.
Now, there have been statistics and stuff, but how many children would you say, on an estimate, flees Eritrea on a yearly basis?
The numbers are quite large, and it's very difficult to really get the exact numbers. But Eritrea at the moment is, by the United Nations, it's considered the 10th highest producer of refugees in the world. At the moment, there are more than 300,000 refugees, at least this according to UN statistics. But it's also acknowledged that that number may be less than the real number because some people may not necessarily report to refugee receiving centers. And then out of those, a lot of children, some as young as 10 years old, are running out of the country into countries that immediately border Eritrea. So they go to Sudan, they go to Ethiopia, and to any other destination that they can get to.
Now, what happens to these children once they cross the border?
Once they cross the borders, they stay in these refugee receiving centers for a while, or until maybe sometime they are then able to leave those centers and go to unknown destinations. But the problem with that is that even while crossing the borders, they are in danger of being shot at because there is a shoot-to-kill policy by the Eritrean government for anyone who tries to flee the country. And once these children even manage to successfully cross into any of the neighboring countries, there's also increasing cases of kidnapping Eritreans to ask for ransoms from their family. And of course, then the families are also very hard-pressed financially to be able to pay any ransoms. And so it's become a lucrative kind of activity for kidnappers in that region. And it may also be that some of the people involved in the kidnapping of Eritrean children and adults alike may even be from within Eritrea, and they cooperate with people from outside to ensure that children are kind of also become victims of this. And of course, children also become open to abuses, including sexual exploitation, human trafficking, and a whole lot of other, host of other abuses.
Who should be taking responsibility for this situation?
I think first and foremost, it's the government of Eritrea that should be taking responsibility for this, because the conditions in the country are what has resulted in a lot of the citizens fleeing. And if they were to change their policies and their practices, we would see a decrease in the number of people that have to leave, especially children. So first and foremost, it's the Eritrean government that should be taking responsibility for what's going on.
Now, that was Dr. Martin Nsibirwa from the University Human Rights Center speaking about the situation in Eritrea with refugee children fleeing in thousands of numbers. Now, let's take a look at what you're saying on social media. Please remember to send us your tweets at SABC Newsroom. All World Cup this morning, so much mixed feelings. England out makes me sad, but Suarez being responsible makes me proud. Love or loathe him, Suarez is just a class act. Suarez is in a different league altogether from the likes of Rooney, who has been so overhyped. Then what shall it profit Rooney to finally get his goal at the World Cup finals and still exit early? Then good job, Uruguay. Awesome game. Suarez was on fire. Hashtag World Cup 2014. Yes, all of the excitement brewing. Remember to send us your World Cup exciting moments on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Now, Newsroom is broadcast live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, between 9 and 10 a.m. every weekday morning. The show repeats at 2 in the afternoon with a rebroadcast at 5 a.m. the following morning. We're also streaming live on YouTube at that time, with the show available on demand on our YouTube channel all the time. This is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom, where we love it in the morning.